Welcome to another edition of Gators Gameday Live. I am Seth Varnadore, joined by Bud Davis. We're here to talk a little bit of Florida, Georgia from last week. We had a post-game show right after the game. If you want our immediate post-game thoughts, you can go find that on YouTube or on X here in the past. But we'll talk a little bit about it because there's still some fallout from that game that'll be pretty impactful going forward, it seems like. And then we'll get into previewing Texas, which is interesting. It's a game that was made really years and years ago as an out of conference game, right? Like there was a Florida Texas game scheduled in this time period ish. And I remember when that series got, scheduled, it was a big deal. So now you got Florida traveling to Texas. It feels like it should be a really big game. But the DJ Lagway injury is kind of casting a large shadow over what should be a fun trip for a lot of people. So, Bud, where are you at on kind of your general thoughts on Florida playing Texas and just kind of maybe some quick general thoughts on Georgia before we kind of get into the biggest kind of story out of that game?
Yeah, I mean, still really disappointed, not being able to come out of that game with a win. I think I keep thinking about that 4th and 3 at the Georgia 33 late in the third quarter when we went to kick a field goal instead of going for it. And that call just really bothers me because, you shouldn't be tied with Georgia there. Like, you're playing with house money. You got low odds to win that game. We talked about you're probably going to need to score touchdowns to win this game because Georgia's going to bounce back. And to kick a field goal there, you just are not going to get that many chances at a TD. And it was scared money. And I really just am surprised by that. I get, you're going to say, hey, some people say, hey, you got a backup third-string QB in there. You haven't been moving the ball that well. Take the points when you get them. And it's like, we were not going to win that game with a field goal.
No.
And if you thought it was going to be tough to score later, you should be emphasizing extra hard, a 3-yard play to potentially make the odds to win almost a 50-50, at least increase them as much as any other play we could do. A field goal is not going to move the barometer that much for our win likelihood. So I think that's what's really stuck with me. That and Aaron Gates. What about you, Seth?
Yeah. No, Aaron Gates was awesome. But on your point, we talked about it at halftime, kind of, what we thought the point total needed to be. We thought it needed to be 24 to 28 points, kind of in there. And that's, I think, where really, going back and re-examining this game, I think a lot of people are talking, you look at success rate and, the yardage and things like that. But I think that was part of the Florida plan, was to kind of allow Georgia to dink and dunk, not get explosives. And then if you get some stops in the red zone or some turnovers, you'd have a chance. And you kind of see when Lagway went out, I think Florida had scored on back-to-back drives. They had a short field on one, or on both actually, but you got a couple more short fields in that game that you converted into no points. So, you feel like if you could have gotten those same short fields with Lagway and converted those into points, you'd have a chance to win. But yeah, that was one of the short yardage kind of, I think that was after the Georgia personal foul. You got in pretty good field position, able to move it a little bit, and then settling for a long field goal where I understand it at the end of a half. But yeah, 51-yard field goal is not automatic. We've seen from the Florida kicking game, it's and then you didn't even get a chance at it because it was a bad snap. So a lot of compounding issues, and I agree with you in terms of like you would much rather just go for it. I think that's one thing that Florida fans will accept, some failures of aggression than failures of passivity. I think that would be one thing that I think is just like a cultural thing at Florida. Like, Florida fans want you to be aggressive. That's why I love pushing the ball down the field and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit of a disconnect there. And then you mentioned Aaron Gates. Yeah, we've been talking about him for a few weeks here after watching him like take on pulling tackles against Tennessee and like stonewall him. The dude, if he we kind of said if he could cover, he's probably going to make a lot of money playing football. And made a great play on the interception. He's been all over the place. So I think he's kind of, to me, that's kind of, he was kind of a leader of that. But just watching back the game, a lot of really young guys making plays. Um, so there's positive things to see. They're just not getting results, which at the end of the day is what matters most. But uh, it's always good to see a bunch of young guys playing. Unfortunately, we may not get to see probably the most popular one, DJ Lagway, play this week at Texas. So,
yeah, it's gonna be a tough loss. I mean, it's one of those times, the line probably would have been similar, Georgia and Texas versus Florida, if we had Lagway, and we can see without him, the spread is pretty large. I mean, 21 plus versus 14.5 for Georgia. So that's telling you they think the drop off from Lagway to Warner is a touchdown a game, which that's a huge value in a single player. But I think that feels about right. If anything, it's probably not even big enough. I think this could be a really ugly game.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Texas. This is a one that I would have been really interested to see a healthy Florida. The way Florida's been playing lately, a healthy Florida in this game, because just looking through some stuff, I don't think Texas is maybe they may be a little bit overrated based on the early schedule, where you're kind of seeing, okay, Michigan is just not very good. Oklahoma, when they played Oklahoma, was just not very good.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt, they didn't blow out Vanderbilt. It was kind of a one-score game, I believe. Then Georgia came in there and just absolutely dominated them. So, but this is a big question about this weekend. We'll get to it from Rob S. Does the streak stay alive? Does Florida keep the scoring streak alive this week?
Man, I hadn't even thought of that. It's got to be in jeopardy. It's probably as much biggest risk it's been at in a long time.
Yeah, this should be is losing the scoring streak a fireable offense? That's many are asking.
I think we're getting close. I don't know. I feel like we've had pretty good open minds, but I think at this point, I think I'm off the bandwagon. I said this at one point last year and then kind of came back around in the offseason. So that might happen again this year, but it's just been a tough year,
Yeah, and it's just, I think if it was, if you go for 2 against Tennessee, if you do a couple of different things, just and the results are similar, you still feel a little bit better. But there's just the mistakes that are being made seem to be a lot of the same mistakes as previous years. So that to me kind of makes you lean towards more of, okay, it's not going to doesn't seem like it's going to get fixed. So the other side of that is you got a lot of young guys playing really well. Defense is playing much better as of late. We'll see if that continues. Team does seem to be improved, but it's year 3. Go back, I went back and started reading some of the stuff I was writing in Mullins last season. And man, the level of expectations has dropped so dramatically. Yeah. It was really interesting. It was kind of sobering to go back and read through what people were writing and what people were saying about Mullins last season, and how, hey, this is not acceptable. And you're kind of you're there almost 3 years in a row. So it's a conundrum.
Yeah, I mean,
the money
Napier's
issue, right?
3 years. Yeah, for sure. So Napier's got 3 seasons. I kind of posted this, I think, early this week, last week. I can't even remember when. But you can use FPI, like a power rating, to evaluate how somebody's doing. Yeah, he's had to face a tough schedule, but we can do a power rating and kind of take out the opponent part and not look at just win-losses, but just look at performance. And Napier's 3 seasons power rating, because he's almost certainly going to end up going downhill from here. We've hit the peak. The rest of the season is going to be bad for Florida. Our power rating is going to go in the trash. He's probably going to end up with the 3 of the 4 worst power Florida teams since FPI came out in 2005. And going back to basically our historic record of play-by-play data, which is 20 years now, he's going to have 3 of the 4 worst years. And it's really tough to have much optimism for a guy to turn it around. Like, yeah, there's unlucky. Yeah, Mullen didn't leave you a lot, but we have the portal. You're at Florida. Like, somebody needs to take the NIL leadership to push this forward. That's well below expectations.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So let's talk now about a little bit about Aiden Warner, who had to come in kind of in a really tough spot, filling for DJ Lagway, and kind of talk. What do you Rob asked a question. Is Billy Napier the worst coach in the SEC right now?
He's definitely in the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it depends. There's some guys that are having poor seasons that probably I would say have much better track records. So there's that.
There's guys I'd rather have him than.
So there you go. So that would be enough
Billy than Drink. And Drinkwitz, like
it's just a personality. That's more of a personality fest. That's more of a personality factor there.
Yeah, I mean, same, basically similar levels of performance.
Yeah, they are underwhelming a little bit over there in Missouri this season. But let's talk Aiden Warner. So he had to come into a tough spot. We kind of talked at halftime of what we thought the plan should be. The plan was a little bit different than what we discussed at halftime. I think some of that is maybe into the game stuff where you're down 2 scores now and you've got to try to get it back. But threw a lot more than I think either of us anticipated.
What was they kind asked him to throw the ball? We ended up, once DJ went out, we ended up with more pass attempts than designed run, which is pretty crazy. More dropbacks, not necessarily pass attempts. Yeah. But he didn't do great, which is tough for Georgia. I mean, you're not going to have the full. Billy's not going to have the full play sheet. Georgia's going to know they're going to come after you because they know who they've got on the other side there. They're going to make it tough. It's not like our run game was killing, but it definitely would have been probably a little bit better if we could have stuck with the run. We thought we might see a pick. We ended up seeing a pick. He didn't look completely terrible, but there was at least 1 or 2 plays where it looked like he left the pocket maybe a little bit early instead of stepping up and throwing one. A couple passes where he just plain missed. And then the rest of it was just tough sledding against Georgia.
Yeah, it's a really hard spot to come in the middle of a game against Georgia. And I think Billy even kind of talked about either in the post game or in his Monday press conference. And we spoke about it kind of at halftime in our post game. This guy has only been the 2 for 2 weeks now. It's not like he's been the backup all year. He was the 3rd string guy. So he's probably been working with a scout team for most of the year. And then now, after the injury to Mertz, now he's probably been elevated and doing second team. But then you've also got a true freshman that you got to get ready. So how many reps is he getting in practice? Really. So this week, it sounds like he's getting all of the team reps. I guess Lagway is trying to practicing in portions, but would you be, I don't know if you've heard anything. I would be kind of surprised if Lagway played this week, right? Do you think it's at least 1 more week?
I don't know. I would be extremely surprised if he played. I kind of thought it was like season's done, but I guess he's trying to go. So, big one I think that I have circled is LSU. That's a winnable game, especially I think if we have him back. So if he can get back by LSU, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would almost punt this game as much as you don't want to say that, but because it's going to be a tough one regardless. But I think we wanted to kind of discuss what we think the offense will look like with Aiden Warner. I do have some clips from the Georgia game of things they did. Maybe there's some good stuff, some bad stuff that we could go through. They weren't all his best plays, but just some things I think is going to have to be a bigger part of the offense when he's kind of involved. So he ended up not getting blocked. I think he might have been thinking most dangerous. And there's also later, like if they're playing man, you can kind of go in and push, crack this, and get him to come inside. It doesn't happen here, but the screen attached to the run game. So if you get the numbers for the screen game, throw the screen, really easy for the quarterback, just keeps people off your run game a little bit. So just throwing the screen. Now, if Badger blocks this, which he seems to be confused to whether I'm, supposed to be cracking this, or if I'm go most dangerous, and he seems to be who's most dangerous. Because the very next play, they hand the ball off, and you see they do have somebody come down and block this apex and have the screen coming out that way. So I don't know if that was like a game plan thing, but obviously some miscommunication here, or just maybe going to the wrong guy, and this look gets him smoked. But nevertheless, these type of screens attached to runs, if people aren't respecting it, you've got to take those out. It's got to be a bigger part of the offense. I think motion and play action have to be huge. I wouldn't want to be in the shotgun too much. I think more pistol would be better for him, because that gives you kind of that play action boot stuff, which are easier throws. But they didn't, when he came in, I don't know if this was part of the game plan, but there's a lot of motion. You've got some guys that can win some, 50-50 balls downfield. This one, he throws the guy's back turn so he can't see it. Good ball, give your guy a chance to make a play. Here's more motion. This is what I think needs to be, and this is mostly the base of the U.S. offense or UF offense, but it's getting the pistol, run your wide zone stuff with motion. And you see here kind of with Georgia playing some man aggressively, he's going to go in kind of like he did on the screen, and now the corner follows him. And then the motion man's out here and can maybe not go on the screen, but can kind of become a lead blocker there. You got one, make a miss. But I think that's got to be kind of pistol wide zone, because right here, there's no real quarterback run threat, I don't think. I don't think teams are going to respect him as a runner, especially because, who's your four-string guy? I don't know. I guess Clay Millen, but Clay Millen has been beaten out by walk-on Aiden Warner. So, I think teams will be like, sure, yeah, run the ball. That's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're going to get a ton of play on him keeping in the shotgun. So play action off the pistol, I think, is kind of your best bet, because of, as you've said so many times, the run tendencies out of shotgun and pistol in this offense. So this is the interception. It's just your classic kind of boot. I think he's motion out in the flat, and then you got the over, and the over's there if you get to it early. Trying to wait for it, and that's where you get.
You think that's an RPO? Kind of look.
I don't know, that DK is doing something kind of.
Offensive line blocking is kind of funny.
They don't. Let's see if they go downfield. They do kind of go downfield. So, I mean, you could. There's some teams that are attaching stuff like this, but let's see if they get back. Yeah, see how Georgia's trying to get back. So this is a play action. Some teams will do. I saw Michigan State talk about this when they had Le'Veon Bell. They have their guards go downfield 2-3 yards on play action, and then just make sure they got back, or they go to 4. Just make sure you get back under 3 before the ball is thrown. So you see George here goes, and then he starts to trail back. So I think it's probably. I don't know. I do not know though what DK is doing. So maybe this is a bust here of some sort, but this is going to have to be a big part of the plan. Now, maybe not into the boundary. Like here, this is a short field, so that's makes if this guy's got to fly to the wide side of the field, it's going to be a lot harder for him to. The spacing will be better and more difficult for him to get underneath this throw. But that was not great there. But I think that's going to have to be a big part of it. He did make some. This was a really nice throw. I want to put this in here because if they feel like if they get him comfortable, these are the kind of throws he's making in practice. Because you've got. They did this a few times where you got like the shallow cross and then the deeper cross off the motion. He kind of stares down the barrel here and makes a really good throw. If that's kind of what they're seeing in practice, then it makes sense that they're like, this is the guy, because this is a really good throw. With pressure, rips it, good catch. But, I think less, and then he's got to make sure he doesn't do any of this anymore. Like, he did a decent job throwing away, but, like, what? Throw it away. You cannot get yourself into third and forever as the backup quarterback, right? So,
yeah.
I'd say lean more on the pistol, less on the gun, because there's going to be no threat of quarterback run game. So people will tee off unless you are really good in the RPO and screen game, which Florida's been pretty bad in the screen game for the most part. Some of the perimeter stuff with the receivers blocking has been okay, but like getting, offensive tackles and guards out there on the perimeter has been pretty bad through Napier's tenure. And, maybe he's really good at the RPO stuff because that's something that's big in high schools and things like that now. And I think he was a pretty good high school football player in the state. So maybe he's really good at the RPO and that'll show. But I'm interested to see how much the game plans change with him, what he's comfortable with. But I'd imagine you see a lot more pistol, more boot stuff, a lot of kind of the more base elements of this offense. And we'll see how many vertical shots you get to, but I think you're going to see a heavy dose of the running game this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's what I'd expect, and what makes sense. But also who knows? Maybe he's lighting it up in practice, and if you're trying to win one of these games, you're probably going to need to take some shots eventually. So might as well. You got nothing to lose now.
No. So let's move on to the Texas Longhorns. But you want to start with the Florida offense so far this year and then look at the Texas defense and kind of see how those two match up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so here we go. Let's remove us from here. So you got the Florida play calling sheet from Bud here. Bud, what is kind of what's kind of the biggest positive, negative here? What sticks out to you? I know the deep shots with DJ Lagway were great, but that may not be in the playbook, I would imagine, this week, or as much of it at least.
Yeah, so we'll start up at the top. I think what jumps out is, overall success rate, 48%, 49%. Those are pretty good. That's a pretty well-balanced offense. Passing game, run game, both working pretty well. EPA is not quite there, so that's where you might see, we talked about this report, like the differences between efficiency-based metrics that are, all-encompassing with the actual expected points. You might see some differences there on how good Florida looks. Generally, not as many sacks and scrambles this year. That's pretty good. We're right in line with FBS average. 12 personnel's done well. A lot of motion, a lot of play action, kind of what we've seen. Deep targets, good. We're really happy about that, especially under Lagway. And then this is where we start getting a little bit concerned is the screen passing game. Really not great. And, RPOs, are kind of a negative play for us. We're not very good at them. A little bit better on the EPA, but not a high success rate play. And that's kind of a shame because you're really using them as an efficiency play. been pretty good against the blitz. Run game's working pretty well outside of the gap running, which is fine. We don't do too much gap running, and we've got pretty big guards, so that kind of tracks. Anything for you, Seth?
Yeah, no, the EPA numbers against man are very good. And then, like you said, being so bad at screen is so that's like something that if you can be really good at, you can really kind of perform above your head a little bit. That's tough. I think if Napier ends up coming back, getting like somebody, an analyst or somebody on staff that's just like a screen guru, which there are guys that are just really good at teaching and designing screens, I think would be really helpful for the offense going forward.
Yeah,
that's something I've been looking for.
We're going to look at an offense that has a good screen game.
Yes, but first let's look at the Texas defense, how they match up, and then I've got some film to watch kind of on both these, just you can kind of see how what they do on film kind of matches the eye test a little bit here. But anything really jump out to you on this Texas defense?
Really good at converting, sacks and scrambles overall percent right in line with FBS. But, you look at the success rate on that, they're turning a lot of those pressures into sacks and not giving up a lot of scrambles. They're good against the deep ball, 33% success rate. That's very good there. A little bit weak against the slot targets. So maybe we look at that. We've got some pretty good slot receivers, but, they match up well with a lot of the things we want to do. They're a pretty well-rounded defense. They don't blitz a lot, and they play a lot of zone. I think that kind of jumps out.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this – we talked earlier about the Texas kind of the schedule for them so far this year has not been really daunting. And the best offense they've played this year, or the best team they've played this year, is Georgia, and Georgia just came out and kind of hammered them a little bit. And we're able to they turned the ball over a little bit. We're able to run the ball really well on them, which I thought was interesting. So, this seems statistically really good defense. Watching them, they don't look like there's like a bunch of studs just in the short period watching them against Georgia. Like, it's not like crazy athleticism everywhere, like watching Georgia's defense. But they seem to play a lot of cover 3, a lot of middle field close, I think was 52%. I'll throw that back up there. Middle field close 52%, and then zone 67%. So I think they play a good bit of cover 3. They'll play a little bit of man, and they will kind of show 3 and roll to 2 and show 2 and roll to 3. So they do move the safeties a little bit. But a lot of middle of the field close, which is kind of what Napier's passing game is kind of designed for cover 3. Is kind of the elevator pitch of his offense is run against 2 high safeties, get them in their cover 3 looks, and then throw the ball with shots and things like that. So, JP saying a lot of 2-4-5, so a lot of kind of 2 down. So it'll be an interesting test here for Florida, especially with the backup quarterback. So let's look at the other side of the ball, which may be a more kind of intriguing matchup here, because Florida doesn't seem to have kind of its best foot forward on offense, but the Texas offense, much hyped, much valued. Sark calling plays, really good play caller. Got a little bit zoomed in there. Sark, really good play caller. You mentioned the screen kind of numbers. Is that what jumps out to you the most? I mean, the deep targets, they don't do it a lot, but they've been pretty successful with it. What else kind of jumps out to you, bud?
Some similarities to Florida, just the motion, the 12 personnel, the heavy use of play action. We see similar with Florida's offense. I think the sacks and scrambles, anytime you're seeing a low number like 5%, it's really good. So they've got a pretty good offensive line. They're running the ball okay. you look at their efficiency numbers, they're not that different from Florida. They're right around 50%. Passing game is much more explosive and successful, and the run game is more explosive and successful. So, 50% deep target success rate, that's really good. Screen game, 53% success rate. That's awesome. They get good pass catching backs, looking 22% of their passes going to running backs. They're getting a lot of the value out of the backs, out of the backfield. Really good distribution of targets from wide, slot, tight end, running back, and then screens. They're going to ask you to defend the pass in a lot of different ways. The RPO is kind of something Sark's known for. It's not exactly jumping out as a heavy tendency, but you do see a high degree of success rate there, 55%, 0.17 EPA per play. That's pretty good. So well-rounded offense, a little bit more gap running than I think zone running than typical. Or there's more zone running, but there's more gap than typical. And yeah.
Yeah, that's what kind of jumped out to me, kind of looking here, is the kind of above average use of gap runs. So a pretty decent split there in terms of doing it and being pretty successful at it. Hasn't the zone run, interesting, the zone runs have not been super, they've been successful, but some low EPA there. So I wonder, there must be some turnovers or something like that factored into that, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good guess. Maybe middle of the field open, looking at that, the too high safety stuff, it seems like they've struggled a little bit more there. I'll be curious how, we decide to approach this, aggressive versus a little more passive. So,
yeah, you see against non-blitz, they've been pretty good, but better against the blitz. So, I wonder, I thought, and we'll get to some film here in a second, but Georgia, I think, played a lot of cloud corners, and so Quinn Ewers is kind of a check down Charlie a little bit. Going and watching the game against Georgia, I thought he wasn't super sharp. Now he's still kind of working back from an injury, but you go back and look at some of his numbers this year in terms of passing depth. Only 9% of his attempts are over 20 yards. So it's like 68% of his attempts are 9 yards or less. So he really gets the ball out quick, throws it short, and lets guys make run after catch. So I thought Georgia, I think, played a little bit more too high, played some more cloud corner stuff. And Florida at times I thought against Georgia, played off a little bit more. They'd mix up the looks, but it really seemed like they were trying to keep things in front of them. This week, I wonder if it's somewhat similar, kind of make Texas slowly move the ball down the field, which I think they may be willing to do, and then try to win once you get into the red zone. Let's look at the Florida defense before we get to the film. So middle of the field open, I think the too high look. Texas can run the ball, but I don't think that's what they kind of are majoring in. They've had a bunch of injuries at running back, so maybe getting into that too high and making them run the ball or keep throwing short passes and not let anything over the top might be the way to go. So the Florida defense, man coverage looks pretty good, which is interesting. Middle of the field open. That's been like a huge shift, right? So it was middle of the field closed was far and ahead there for a while. That's been kind of the big shift since the bye week.
Yeah, and we got absolutely scorched on it early in the season. You'll still see us play, a fair bit of the cover 3 stuff. It's basically even split right now. But I think we have seen a tendency to go a little bit more too high. I think looking at this, like some of the things that kind of jump out is we haven't been particularly great against, play action, motion, RPOs, some of those things that we know we're going to get. We've been pretty good against screens, pretty good against running back targets. So it'll be interesting to see how we match up. Gap runs, okay, not great, but yeah, it'll be interesting what defense shows up this week.
Yeah, and can they? I wonder if they feel like they can kind of roll out a similar game plan to the one they had against Georgia. Now Sark is really good and really creative, but Ewers does not seem to want to push the ball down the field very much. So if you can kind of keep things in front of you and kind of bring pressures at the right time, I think you can have some success against this Texas offense. Now, that was also the Georgia defense. Texas Georgia's obviously got a little bit better talent profile defensively than Florida, but I do think Florida is stout up front, has been playing better. So let's watch a little bit of Texas here and kind of see how they like to play and see how kind of how this matches up with kind of the numbers here. So we'll start with the Texas offense against Georgia. This is, just some of this is first drive of the game. Some of it's different parts, just kind of get a flavor. So you see a shift early. And then first play of the game, just got a quick throw, right? It was just running all curls, 9-yard curls, quick throws. This is kind of like a really quintessential Sark here. You got motion, and then you've got an RPO off the motion that's really creative. You've got this here. I think this is one the Dolphins run a ton. He's got the wheel, and then he's in the flat here. Really well designed, really cool stuff. RPO.
Yeah, because he almost looks like split motion. Yeah.
Yes, it looks like split zone, and he carries it out, and then you got the motion guy, which can do two things. As he motions here, he widens out, and then you may just get this throw right here, right now. If they play man, you see the Dolphins kind of sometimes hit that guy up on the sideline. And then you also have that late, right? So you got a lot of options on this. Yours easy pull and throw, picking up the first down. But you can see Georgia keeping the corner, right? Kind of he's kind of staying in the flat. He's not getting depth because of all those throws, short throws behind. I mean, there's 30 plus percentage of their throws are behind the line of scrimmage for Quinn Ewers. So you might have to rally and tackle a bunch in this game against their passing game. But you're going to get a lot of motion. You're going to get RPO. This is kind of that short, quick passing game, right? You get Yours is, I think he's like really, you never go broke taking a profit kind of guy. He's just, if you're going to give him the short stuff, he's going to take it and work the ball down the field, which can be good. But in a game where you don't have I think you don't have a thought that, hey, I'm going to be able to score a ton offensively and I want to get a bunch of possessions, shortening the game, making them slowly drive the ball down the field. And then when you're on offense, being able to run the football and shorten the game might be your best chance. But so here's motion, and then kind of an interesting way to get to the run play. So really, I mean, they're really creative. They do a lot of stuff. You see a lot of the stuff they do is stuff the Dolphins do. And it's also a lot of stuff Florida wants to do. I think besides the RPO and screen game, which they're a lot better at, and I think that's kind of the failings of Florida's offense, they want to be pretty similar. They want to motion. They want to move. Here's kind of a look at motion again. And Georgia was able to kind of lock these guys up pretty well here. Force Ewers off the spot. But again, just that the motion, this is kind of a really popular motion now. You're getting a bunch, which a lot of times gets the defense to check to a certain coverage. And now he's going to motion out, and you're going to snap it on the run and try to get that crease down the sideline. Georgia handles it really well, but you're going to see motion and things like that to try to create bust in the coverage. You're going to see here motion. And you're going to see trick plays. This one's interesting. I'm trying to decide, is he checking this down or is this the design of the play here? Because this is the design. This is like a hat on a hat on a hat, and like really, really cool because you've got not only do you have the flea flicker, you've got the post here, which you'd be like, okay, the post is the shot. That's what you want. And then you have the wheel here, which is like, okay, that's the secondary if they take away the post. But then they also have the back come through. So the back that hands it off come through here.
It gets vertical in a seam, right?
And it gets vertical. Yeah. So it's like, is that created for that? So it's really like, if that was the play design, really, really cool. The back drops it here, but you can see how this kind of develops. So, and they'll do this kind of stuff just to throw screens. They'll do it. So they're going to be creative. I'm sure they're going to have some wrinkles in there. Like the third option there, if he catches that, it's a huge play. So I think they didn't play their best against Georgia.
Yeah,
so
for
it's
sure.
Somewhat judging them off that game is a little harsh. There's a little RPO. They do take a shot here, but man, that's like this is not a DJ Lagway deep ball right here.
No,
that's just up in the air. You get the penalty out of it, but they don't throw it down the field a ton. But as you showed, when they do, it's been really successful. So they seem to pick and choose their spots. This, I think, is like a really good look at Sark. So you're going to motion the tight end in, and then you're going to run a gap. You're going to run a kind of a counter scheme away from him and have him be a puller. So you've got to really be conscious of where everybody's lined up. When the new formation resets after motion, here's another one where I'm motioning out and I'm motioning back into the bunch. Getting information for the quarterback, but also setting some stuff up. This is where I thought yours was a little – he gets smoked here, but this is one of the plays where I'm like, he's a little off. Because right here, this is kind of a classic – play right here, and to me this is the reads defined. So here he's going to go first and then he's going to follow, and really as soon as they kind of start to wall this off, he should be coming to the follow right here, in my opinion. So right there, as soon as you see that, he should be sticking it on this right here, and he's kind of holding it and waiting for it. I don't know what he's waiting for. And then by the time he gets off of it, he's getting smoked. And you can see from the back, you can kind of see his eyes. So I don't know if he's feeling rusty or if he's not seeing it super clear, but I thought this was a pretty well-defined one. And a lot of times it's if this guy takes the shallow, rip it to the follow behind him right now. And he's just holding it, and then he gets killed and fumbles the ball. Now, really well-timed blitz by Georgia. So bring the corner from the boundary. So if you can do that, that'd be great. But I just thought it was interesting. I don't think yours is super sharp right now. So now they've had a bye week, so he could have sharpened up. But looking at Texas defense, you see they'll play. They don't blitz a ton, but they bring a blitz on the first play a little man coverage. You'll get some. I think you'll get mostly this. Or right here, you roll to 3 high. And Georgia's got Y cross on, which is we know is a Florida staple here. So I thought it was a pretty good look at the Y cross. Good pocket. Ends up coming down, but there's some space over here if you can get there. It takes a while. Comes to the dig behind
how deep that safety is. The middle of the field close safety looks like Florida safety.
It's Castell-esque, some would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the third down. Show the 1 high, cover 3 type look, and now he's going to roll back to the half. He's going to play half, and they're going to play like more of a cover 2 look and try to squat on things in front of him, which is, kind of works out perfectly for what Georgia wanted to do and throw it short to the back. So there's mixed up. So they'll show 2, roll to 3, show 3, roll to 2. It seems like 1 high is their main look, but they will show other ones. But I thought Georgia had and then watching Georgia against Florida, Georgia had some success in the running game, but I didn't think they kind of pounded Florida up the middle, right? I thought they got Florida a bunch on pin and pull outside, some reverses and things like that. Georgia was able to kind of run right at Texas a little bit. So I think Florida's got to just be committed to running the football, which I don't know if you can, you don't have to convince Billy too hard to be committed to running the football. But just watching some of these, I'm like, oh, Georgia's kind of ran right at him.
Under center too.
Good cut, yeah. So that there was just times where I thought they were able to kind of move the ball down the field on them. Miss one here, yeah. So another look. We're showing too high here. Roll to the one high. Drop it underneath. But yeah, it's just you're going to see they're going to try to mix up coverages. This will be important for Aiden Warner, right? Make sure doesn't get confused, doesn't get fooled. But they will run. They will kind of get into some man too. So here they're going to, and watch, this one was wild to me. So he's got him man. He's got him man here. This is who has the back and man coverage right here. He's going to fly to it. You kind of get a bad throw here off what is essentially a pick play. Turns into an interception down there in the red zone. But so you'll see some man coverage, and this was kind of a wild one to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Bringing him all the way from the roof, basically. So, yeah, it should be. Billy is made for spot drop cover 3, baby. So if there's a lot of that, I think you'll feel most comfortable. But I don't know. It'll be it should be an interesting matchup schematically, just due to kind of some of the constraints. But Florida's defense against Texas's offense is kind of the most interesting side of it to me. Just trying to see, will they play kind of like Georgia did, a little bit more too high and kind of squat the corners to take away some of those quick throws of the backs, or will they try to go middle of the field close more? I don't know. Texas has not been – they've been pretty good running the football, but I think if you had to take one away with all the injuries they've had at back, you'd probably try to take away the passing game. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know. This is kind of one you kind of wish, okay, if Florida was full strength, you'd feel like – I feel better about this game than I did the Georgia game after watching a little bit of it. But Florida's not full strength, so I think it's going to be a really tough one.
Do we have a bet? Like, is there a line on Aiden Warner's passing yards? You got one?
Oh, look, I don't know. They're always stingy with that when a guy's hurt. So they're always kind of slow to put one up. Because I would imagine if you put one up and you just hammered the under, and then if Lagway plays at all, you'd feel like really good about it. Let me see if they've got one up right now.
It's gotta be wild.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would be super high. I think he ended up with 66 yards passing last week. They don't have it out yet. That may be a later in the week release. They kind of keep all the they release kind of the marquee games first.
Yeah.
And later in the week you get some of the other games. And shockingly, maybe not shockingly, but sadly, Florida Texas is not a marquee game this week. So if you'd have told somebody that, 15 years ago, they would have laughed at you. But as it is right now, it's a noon kick on what should be a really good college football Saturday. So,
yeah, and I think we'll try it. We'll watch. We'll probably play it by ear. What shows we do. If it's a blowout, we might not discuss it. But if it's a competitive game, we'll probably do our usual stick and do the halftime post game.
So let's see. Let me pull up here where the line is at right now. What the consensus line is for this game. Let's see, what do we got here? I know it was 20 plus earlier. It is okay. So the total is at 47.5, which is interesting. Seems pretty low.
Yeah.
21.5 right now. Florida's a 21.5 point underdog with a 47 point total. So interesting.
Feels about right.
Yeah. So
it's tough, man.
Unfortunate. I was really hoping we get a little DJ Lagway, Texas homecoming, but I don't think it's meant to be. But
that would be great story, great game.
Yeah, it would have been pretty cool. But we'll be back possibly on Saturday if it's a competitive game. If not, we'll be back next week to review and preview the next game. Thank you guys for watching. If you're enjoying this, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow us on X because we go live there and on YouTube every week following this interesting Florida Gators season. So hopefully we're talking on Saturday during a competitive game. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll happen, but hey, you never know.
College football, weird things happen all the time.
That's right. So hopefully we'll see you guys on Saturday. In the meantime, go Gators.
Go Gators.